Hilda Rasula, editor of American Fiction. This film is based on Percival Everett's novel Erasure. Were you familiar with the book before this?
No, I wasn't. I had heard of Percival Everett. He had like a New Yorker profile a few years ago that I'd seen his name and I knew he was local, but that's really all I knew about him, and hadn't read the book. No.
Did you read it after, the court brought this to you?
No, I actually read it after we locked picture.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a few years ago, I decided that when I work on an adaptation, I do not want to read the book beforehand. And I really just want to follow what the
Right.
screenplay is trying to tell me and not get too influenced by the original book.
That was my next question. I was like, as an editor, what do you want to work off, just the script or the source material?
Yeah, I think both ways are fine. And if a director ever asked me to do, read the source material first and they wanted me to, of course I would. But in this case, yeah.
What did you and Cord Jefferson talk about once you came on board? Because I love what I love about this film is like it's a satire, but it's not like a total farce. Like there's a lot of really grounded drama in it as well.
Yes. Yeah, we talked about that tone. We didn't really talk about external influences. It was really about the script and the character arcs and the story. And Cord always knew that he wanted to do something that could go into some absurdist places, but that had a certain groundedness that, you felt like this could happen in the real world. Whatever elements of satire are happening could happen. And we occasionally would have these moments in the edit room of like questioning certain jokes, as you do with any comedy when you're cutting comedy, of like, is this a step too far? Is this pendulum swinging a little too into the zone of like, would this really happen? And then we'd have moments where we'd look at each other and be like, nope, we've been in rooms. This has happened like this before. Each of us can relate to this experience. Yeah.
Yeah, because the film, it's a lot of the mockery or stand up is of the publishing and the film industry as well, and some of
Yeah.
the conversations.
Yeah. Media at
Yeah.
large has a target on its back.
So were there any specific moments or scenes where you did have to pull back a little, like, oh, maybe we're leaning too far into the set
Yeah.
a little bit?
Sure. I mean, it wasn't so much a question of Cord's writing because his writing is so good, but it was more about, like any movie, honing the performances, really making sure that we kept this grounded, an edge of a grounded tone. I with my taste anyway, tends to not swing too broad in terms of comedy. I really like more grounded comedy or dark comedy. And so we together just sort of naturally fell into a zone of kind of appreciating the same vibe and wanting to keep things in a slightly grounded, realistic zone and not get too farcical.
Mm-hmm. Well, when Monk is writing his book, he imagines certain scenes and then we see it play out in the
Yeah.
film in front of him. So what was it like putting together that scene in particular?
That scene is one of my favorite scenes in the movie. I'm glad you called that out. Yeah, that kind of edge of magic realism or
Yeah.
that happens is a special moment in the movie, obviously, because it breaks all of your expectations of what you thought this movie was leading up to that moment, and it's this like strange breath of fresh air that comes in tonally, which is great. I also love that it's like such an imaginative way to stage that. Like in so many other movies, I feel like we would cut away to
Mhm.
the imagined book that he's writing in his head or find a different way to reveal that. I mean, watching writers write on screen can often be a little painful as well. So yeah, I mean, to me, I read that it was all there on the page and it was just such a startling moment in the script that when I read it, I was like, this is amazing. This is going to be amazing. And it was, when the footage came in too, it was one of those magical scenes that kind of was electric from the beginning. I love that scene.
Yeah, and I love the way it's shot too, because it's a satirizing what he's writing about, basically the way it's framed and everything too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we knew that in that scene and the series of scenes at the end,
Yeah.
we really wanted to get deep into this play in a meta sort of way with story, with the concept of story and storytelling, because that's really ultimately such a huge part of what the movie is about and what our protagonist is about.
Yeah. Oh, so what was it like editing those final sequences towards the end? Because it's different genres, I guess you could say.
Yes,
I don't know, not to give too much away.
No, I'll try not to spoil anything, but I will say it's like an editor's dream, to you go through your career not wanting to get too pigeonholed into one genre or another. And so to be handed an opportunity inside of one movie to play with genre and to dip into these different tones of action movie and sweeping romance and satire, all in a breath, in a sense, is it was so much fun. It really was just a dream to kind of play with that and have fun with that.
Yeah. Was there any thing that was cut, like any genre that was cut, or was that all everything else in the script made it?
No, there was not like an extra ending that was cut. In fact, what's funny is that there was an extra ending that was added.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which is interesting. We Cord wrote a new, there are two rewrite new scenes that were added, later in the process and reshot, and the final ending is a new scene that he wrote. We realized that we had a really wonderful ending that left like 80% of audiences, we would cut to black for the end credits, and it would leave like 80% of people would leave laughing and gasping. It was a very funny, interesting ending, but we realized that ultimately for the film that we had, that's really trying to explore this larger scope of human experience and human emotion, ending right in the pocket of satire was probably not what the movie really needed. And so Cord wrote this this different extra ending that I think actually weirdly just, it just lifted the whole thing up into this interesting human zone,
Yeah, I think it definitely works. And again, goes back to what you were saying before about balancing the groundedness with the satire.
I think we had to ultimately question, like, what are we really doing here in this movie? The movie's doing different things and juggling different balls and kind of playing a lot of different experiences and emotions, but ultimately, is this just a satire, or is this like a humanist film that is ultimately about people living their lives? And obviously we sort of landed on the latter.
Yeah. Well, speaking of people, you have an amazing cast here, but Jeffrey Wright, obviously the central performance, and he's so great in this. And I feel like, people, like maybe some fans might not know like how funny he can be. Like I think they'll be maybe surprised by his performance here. But it's like, what was it like just editing, just an incredible performance like that when you have, so much material from him basically. And I know he also improv certain lines that ended up in the final cut.
Yes, that's true too. In a word, it's a gift. His daily started coming in and I was like, oh, wow, he is in the pocket of who this character is. He really knew who Monk was, our protagonist. He knew who Monk was right away and was always in him kind of perfectly, he's really such a strong actor. I think the character, of course, is also like a very tightly wound kind of grumpy guy. So anytime there was a little like hint of a smile peeking through or a chuckle that would escape Monk's lips, I was like, we're using that. We are using every piece of that. But yeah, he's amazing. It is a gift when you have the perfect actor playing a role. How can you? It's great. And yes, the comedy you mentioned, his humor is actually, we think of him as such a dramatic actor, but like in a lot of the comedic scenes, I would use his single, a cut to his single as a joke punctuation. His single became the joke, even though he's a straight man, he's the ultimate straight man in those scenes. It's like his little, very subtle reactions to things become the joke, and they punctuate it like this little shot note, on a trumpet or something. It's it's funny because there's so much absurdity going on around him that you need the straightness of Monk and Jeffrey's face to kind of anchor that. And that actually became a humorous touchstone, we realized.
Yeah, and it's also like his reluctance to participate in this, right? He's just you
Those
can't
like,
believe
yeah,
this is all happening.
exactly. Like sometimes just like one amazing hangdog look from
Yeah.
Jeffrey is like, it just,
I feel you. I get it. It's
yeah.
totally.
Yeah, it is sort of, actually, it's a good point you're making too. It's sort of inviting the audience in to be like, can you relate to this? Do you see what's happening here? Yeah.
We get it. Yeah, I feel you. So Hilda, it was great speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time. We'll see you
Thank
back
you
here in a
so
little
much.
bit.
Okay, great.
Yeah.